Good. Slide number one. I hope we're not going to have the same issues before. How many of you have heard of Skyscanner and use it? Show of hands. Okay, we seem to be doing a decent job. So quick introduction. We're a meta search company, which basically is a search company. If you need flights, hotels, or car hire, you can go and compare different choices. We're in more than 50 countries, and there we have more than 1 million users every year, more than 30 languages supported, and we have 1,200 staff, 11 offices globally. I started the Sofia office when I joined the company. We were 350 people. A few years ago, actually a couple of years ago, Ctrip, which is one of the biggest Chinese travel companies in the world, bought us for $1.8 billion. We have an amazing office here, so if you're interested, reach out to me right after this. Next slide. Are we going to have the same thing? Okay. Should I say next slide every time? All right. How many of you recognize 5 or more logos on this side of the screen? Show of hands. Awesome. Pretty much every one of you actually can recognize 5 or more logos. How many of you can recognize 5 or more logos on this side of the screen? Be honest. There's one person. Awesome. Cool. The companies that we have on the blue background are the companies that are famous because they're global companies that started usually have started in the United States, some of them not necessarily. The companies that you see on the right are companies in Asia. In the next few minutes, I'll make an argument that Asia is eating the world and it affects our product investment and thinking in terms of internet trends. And then in the second part of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means as we build different products for our respective companies. The logos you see here include Alibaba, which is the second biggest retailer in the world, WeChat, which has 750 million users every single day, Paytm, which is a payments company in India. So if you're not familiar with those logos, I say, please do get familiar. You'll get inspiration from their products, but I can guarantee you in 5 to 10 years, we'll all be using this stuff on a daily basis. The first part of the presentation is inspired by a couple of pieces. The first one is software is eating the world. Some of you might have read this article. It's basically saying that any industry is going to be eaten by the software that is created. So any industry will get a lot better with software. The second piece is mobile is eating the world, which is basically everyone has a computer in our pockets, and that computer has more power than the computer that sent man to space 40 years ago. So Asia is eating the world, first part. As I was saying, Asia is special, and we should take inspiration from Asia about our product building and thinking, because within 6 hours, you can reach 4.5 billion people if you start in Singapore. Annual sales in terms of computer versus phones, you guys are very much familiar with this kind of like trend. In 2012, phones were selling faster than desktop and laptop computers. So if anyone's building a web-based application, just forget about it, just kill it, because there's no sense in investing in that space. Here's a very interesting slide which has a lot of information in it, but the point that I'm trying to make it, before it took quite a while to reach 100 million users. Feature phones, for example, took about 15 years to get to 100 million users. As internet technologies and software started developing, you can see that in the latest years, Didi, which is the local version of Uber in China, it's separate companies now, took only 1.4 years to reach 100 million users. And then Youbao, and I'm sorry if somebody can pronounce this better, is the financial arm of Alibaba, a special product included in Alipay. It took only 1.1 years to reach 100 million users. Those numbers are insane, but just think about the power of software that we can have. So let's talk a little bit about internet trends and how the internet is developing in Asia versus the rest of the world. In Asia, we have the most population, obviously, to the far right. Also, we have the largest base of internet users. And the funniest part is that the penetration is still low. So this is only supposed to grow. As you can see here in East Asia, we have only 57% penetration. In the United States and Western Europe, we've almost reached maturity, so you can access or get access to any customer possible. But if you're focusing your products to the Asian markets, there is quite a bit of room to grow. Here, a little bit of a confusing slide, but what I'm trying to show to you is the bars in red are Asian or Asia-Pacific countries. This is quite interesting in terms of mobile traffic as part of all of the traffic. And you can see that the average is somewhere in the middle as usual, about 50%, but most of the Asian countries will surpass internet traffic through their mobile devices. Expect this to happen everywhere. Another thing that I wanted to show you is messenger versus social network usage globally. Again, in red we have Asia, in green we have Western world. Asia is fastly catching up with all of this. In APAC specifically, we have WeChat, QQ, Baidu, and a few others that are roughly the same or similar size to what the Western companies are. So, internet trends in Asia are on the rise. If you're not there as product people, as product managers, if you're not getting any inspiration from it, please take a note because I think it's hugely interesting and important for us to follow where the growth is happening. Value and investments. So we'll talk a little bit about the difference between value and investments in Asia and the Western world. In the Western world, a lot of the companies that are here represented or you work for raise money from Western investors. Usually you'll get an investment from one or two VCs, and that's great. In Asia, everyone invests in everyone. Rivals invest in each other, which is quite surprising and funny. What I'm showing you here is the growth of investment and the growth of technology companies in 2011. Any one of you who has been an investor on the publicly traded markets knew that those were the companies that were the biggest companies globally based on market cap. So Apple, ExxonMobil, PetroChina, Microsoft, and ICBC, which is an Asian company. If you take a look at the right, those are the most highly valued companies. Numbers are a little startups. If you take a look at the highly valued startups in the world, 9 of them are in Asia of the top 20. And combined, they are actually 5.7 trillion in terms of value, which sits somewhere between China and Japan in terms of GDP. So the size of the top companies, the size of the market in Asia is insane. When you combine it with technology, I think it gets quite interesting. A little bit of investments. This is Alibaba's investments, where Alibaba has invested. So they've invested mostly outside of Asia. So if previously Western companies would invest in Asia, now Asian companies are investing in the West. Didi, in time, Lazada, Tokopedia, and Ele, as they pronounce it, are Asia-based investment, but everything else is outside of it. Tencent, which is the second biggest company in China in terms of technology, those are the folks that provide WeChat, has made a bunch of investments, mostly in China, but they bought Supercell, which is a technology gaming company out of Finland. SoftBank, some of you might have heard of SoftBank. This is an interesting investment vehicle for the $100 billion Vision Fund. They're mostly investing outside of Asia. And then finally, our parent company, which is Ctrip, this is the logo of the company that bought us, has invested mostly in Asia, but starts investing quite a bit outside. So basically, the story here is, if you're looking for investments, if you're working in a company that's trying to raise, look for investors in Asia because they have the most cash and they're expanding quite a bit. Otherwise, you'll be competing with the guys in Silicon Valley. Product. We in the West think that we're amazing at product. Everything that we say is like, yeah, great, Asia is amazing, China is great, but they cannot do design, it doesn't make sense, product is not necessarily there. If you take a look at when payments in Messenger were released, 2016 was when Facebook finally got to it. In 2013, WeChat had it. In 2011, Alipay and Alibaba had it in messaging services. So not really the pioneers in that space. QR codes made popular by Snapchat. A lot of you might be using it. Actually started with Alibaba in 2010, and that's how it spread out. If you take a look at in terms of inspiration, here I'm focusing on travel. I'm from the travel technology industry. On the left, you have Expedia, one of the biggest brands in travel in the world. On the right, you have Ctrip, which is actually showing more and more products on the same screen, and Expedia is getting there. So expect Expedia to actually copy quite a bit the Asian counterparts in the face of Ctrip. In terms of Amazon and Alibaba, Amazon thinks that they're the pioneers of creating the so-called store. So if you go to Amazon, you'll be able to see Tommy Hilfiger as such. Well, that was created quite a while ago by Alibaba. That's how their model works. So not really product innovation here. And for the iPhone fans, for a lot of you, I see a lot of people smiling like, of course, like Xiaomi is killing it. Xiaomi had a better phone, or actually a better looking phone before Apple did. So definitely we got beaten up in terms of West versus East there as well. So product inspiration, take a look at some of the products in Asia. You don't have to try to copy Facebook. I'm telling you, try to copy WeChat because this is where the market is going to go. All right, trends. Mobile payments, you probably talked quite a bit about it already. There's like a couple of other sessions that will cover this, which is good. In China, in 2012, there were 10 million in mobile payments, $10 million. In 2016, they got to $5.1 trillion. Most of the transactions in China are already mobile. We're still fighting whether we can make our little phones work with the public transportation here. But this is going to grow. That's being picked up. Apple Pay is now available, as you know, and Google Wallet in a lot of the Western markets. Mobile payments in terms of a trend is a big thing, so follow it closely. Transportation and shared transportation, 67% of all the shared rides, which includes cars, scooters, bikes, happen in China alone. This is spreading. The guys will fight with a little bit of regulation in Europe and in the United States, but even in the United States these days, you see a lot of companies copying what's available in China and trying to bring it there. Voice search. Amazon Alexa, for those of you who actually use the Echo Dot or just any Echo device, big innovation for us. Everyone's impressed. Finally, we can get the weather. If we say, hey, what's the weather like going to be tomorrow? WeChat, 84% of all WeChat users, and I told you it was 750 million people, use voice on a daily basis. So they communicate through voice in their phones. They don't type anymore. It's like messages that you send and they're bots. Facial recognition, there's a lot of privacy concerns that we're experiencing right now. We've heard like a couple of interesting applications of face recognition technologies. In China, you can board your plane just walking through the gates. So this is Jack Ma. He's the founder of Alibaba, and he's showcasing, that was about a little bit over a year and a half ago, when they introduced the technology where you don't have to wait for somebody to check your passport and boarding pass. You just walk in and take a seat. All right, we continue. In our part of the world, we're still offline to online. A lot of you will probably hear, oh, let's make this business digital, let's take it online. Well, the truth is, in APAC, people are so advanced that now they're actually bringing it back offline. So now you can use your phone to interact with an offline business. You can walk into a store, just pay through your mobile phone. You can order coffee or food on your phone. When you sit down at a restaurant, you don't have to wait for the waiter. You can just submit your order and split the bill before it comes back to you. So that trend will be quite slow getting there because we're still on the left side, which is let's make the sites or the products digital. So east to west rather than west to east in terms of trends. I'll talk to you a little bit about travel again. That's my specialty, so I want to give you some staggering numbers which will surprise you or maybe not anymore. The size of the market in Asia is a lot bigger than the US and Europe. It has, like the change really happened between 2015 and 2017. Historically, the United States has been the biggest travel market, but not anymore. In terms of mobile gross bookings, it's quite interesting to see that the most developed countries that use mobile payments and technologies and people use a lot of phones, they don't even register on the map. There was no prediction and data for it because they were so small that it didn't matter. In China, 77% of every transaction in travel happens on a mobile phone. So they don't use desktop anymore. That's why I was telling you, don't build a website. Build an app or build an optimized mobile web site. India and Japan are the same. They're picking it up. So clearly, the market there is big. One number that I found out of the top 20 airports in the world, we have already quite a few entrants. 8 of them are in APAC in terms of size. And China is building by 2020 136 airports. I think it's quite telling. If those guys can build more than 100 airports, we cannot get Terminal 1 to work properly or Terminal 2. It's quite telling where we stand. All right, in terms of routes, which is like A to B flights, Hong Kong to Taipei is a good example. International routes, all in Asia. Domestic routes, pretty much all of them are in Asia in terms of traffic and size. So this is the travel, as I said, the experience. I'm repeating that slide on purpose. The experience is getting the same. Like we're actually following Asia now instead of leading it. And this is the slide that I talked to you about, so I'm not going to repeat it. Basically, the trial in Asia is a lot bigger than the trial in the rest of the world. So conclusions for this part of our session. I promised I'll get through 100 slides today. And by the way, I'm only 15 minutes in. And Christo, you asked me to speak for 45, so imagine if that happened. Internet is up, investments. If you're raising money, look for investments in Asia and the Middle East. product, get inspiration, please. Take a look at some of those offerings because they're far ahead in terms of how you build for mobile. They don't even know what it is to build for web. So they don't have this transition of like, oh, let's optimize for app or mobile web. They only build it for mobile phones and mostly apps. Trends, east to west. Do follow closely the trends because a product that actually shines there probably is going to come to us. Historically, you know, we had eBay in the United States, and here you have a, I think Grabo was like trying to do Groupon kind of a thing. So we would take inspiration from the West, take a look at what's happening in the East because I think this will be a lot more relevant for our users in the future, and travel is big in Asia. And this is not only China. India is picking up quite a few investments in India, Indonesia as well. They have a bunch of unicorns, so the entire region is growing quite fast. All right, first part of the presentation. Are we doing all right? Show of hands. By the way, if you feel offended and like this is too long for you, I don't get, like, walk out. It's entirely fine. I'm not going to hold it up against you. So convergence. So what happens after Asia takes over the world, and then what comes next? And this was the topic that I wanted to like slow down a little bit and talk to you about product thinking, product trends, and what it means to actually convert onto the same kind of like product experiences. This time I'm using a different slide, which is time to 50 million users. I use this because I included different categories, not only in China as a company, but you can see airlines took about 68 years to get to 50 million users, and Pokemon Go took 35 days. I love it. The story here is, and that's my poor drawing, you have convergence and divergence. Some of you who are into economics will know that Solo's model predicts that countries will get far ahead, and then over time the others will catch up, and that's how we develop. This is happening at a faster rate right now, and actually I think it's quite inspiring. I think Asia is leading us now, but that actually brings all of us up. And we're at a moment where we're converging quite a bit in terms of technologies, in terms of product experience, in terms of the language we use to express different feelings and opinions. Why? Because we're a lot more connected than before. Now, disclaimer, China has its own version of the internet. Anyone who's traveled there probably knows that. But we're a lot more connected than before. Everyone, as I said, has a mobile device. At one point, it becomes our own identity. We identify with the phone. This is our information, not only just Facebook and social media information, but payment information, medical information that goes with us these days. And then clearly artificial intelligence, which some people say is super overhyped. Other people say is like it's gonna kill us. Like the truth is we're at the very beginning of artificial intelligence and how we can optimize stuff. But we're a lot more connected, we're converting. And the reason why we're converting, mobile phones are spread, but artificial intelligence, you won't find too much of a difference of how developers, software developers, think about AI in Beijing, in Sofia, and in New York. Because it's the same kind of practices that they use. So we're actually able to catch up with the leaders because now we have access to tools and technologies that just level the playing field. Before it was just in the Silicon Valley or these days in China, but with artificial intelligence, you can be building that anywhere. Probably the number of times you've heard blockchain, ML, and AI in the first 5 hours of the day is enough, but seriously, artificial intelligence is the reason why we're gonna convert in terms of product experiences. So, my little theory, in the 90s, when the internet was born, in the United States, and famously claimed by Al Gore, who said that he invented it, the first years of the internet were kind of led by the West, because that's where the technology was spread out. Like when I accessed the internet for the first time in my life, I used the dialed-up modem, which some of you might actually know what it is. I mean, judging by the age of the people in the audience, probably not. But you would just hold up the line, like nobody was able to call you. Not that it mattered. The second part is the interesting part, which is the Asia-led. So, starting 2000. In those years, this is when a lot of the Asian companies were born. Alibaba is quite old. It's a 20-year-old company now. Asia is starting to lead the way, and they will uniquely lead it, especially in this like 2015 to 2025. And then I would argue that after 2010, we're starting to see the first signs of actually converting technologies, product experiences, and the way we do business and the way we sell our products. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll just hint at what's going to come next, because if we're all the same, then what makes us different, really? So a couple of good examples. Tesla for the fans. This is NIO on the right. NIO is the Chinese company that went public. Excuse me. Um, Electric vehicles, clearly that's a trend, but right now there's no real difference between what NIO does and Tesla does. I mean, of course, the logo and like how the car looks on the outside, but in terms of technology, it's exactly the same. Phones, we talked about this, but like again, looking at it, Samsung and Xiaomi and Apple, at a higher level, they're kind of starting to produce exactly the same output. If previously we had a little bit of a difference, you're looking at Apple and you say, okay, fine, this is high-end stuff, and then maybe Android-based phones were a little bit different. Now they're starting to look the same. I mean, honestly, if somebody showed me that, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Logistics. Amazon and Alibaba are using exactly the same AI technologies to make sure that when we hit Black Friday happening, I guess next week now, Black Friday happens a week before Black Friday actually happens, and Cyber Monday, they have optimized this so much that now you can deliver packages across the globe in just like a matter of days. Just recently, 11th of November, which is the Singles Day, that's what it's called in China. This is the biggest shopping holiday in China. Alibaba sold merchandise in 24 hours, which was equal to $31.5 billion in a single day. And they hit $1 billion in the first 1 minute and 23 seconds. Anyone in e-commerce knows that this is an unbelievable number. The most interesting part is within the first hour, packages already started going to the customers. So this is how we are actually learning from different parts of the world and how the logistics are optimized. Our guys at Speedy and Econt are doing a good job. I mean, it takes a couple of days for like 200 miles, but the story is you'll notice that those technologies, a lot of them are open source. You can use them, and you can actually apply them to what you think is right in terms of your business. Self-driving, Waymo, which is the arm of Google, they did a lot of self-driving experiments. By the way, they just got certified as the first company that is allowed to to experiment with driverless cars without the person present in them in California and in Nevada. Huge achievement. Clearly, we're all looking for the day where nobody's going to be driving and sitting in traffic. But Baidu is doing something very interesting in Asia right now. So they're doing something very similar, and they're actually register lower number of accidents than Waymo. So the technologies are converging, split by multiple different time zones and miles. Both those companies are developing technology that is essentially going to do exactly the same thing. Payments, Apple Pay, PayPal, Google Wallet, a lot of you might be using it. We think that's the driver, but those technologies that are on the East and globally are quite interesting, and they actually are quite better in some cases. Fraud protection, for example, for WeChat and Alipay is quite high. There is no way you can really fraud somebody's account for a number of reasons. I mean, some of them are government related, but the truth is the way they've built the product allows you to know that this is the person, that's their phone, and there's no fraud happening. But overall, this is converging. So what we see in WeChat Pay is now in Apple Pay and vice versa. AI. By the way, has anyone seen this painting before? 3 people. You guys like it? I like it. It's a little bit weird. All right, most of you don't like it, which is a good sign for humanity. This was built. This was built by the famous painter Google Painter, which is based on AI, taking into account a ton of different paintings and deciding what to actually draw. But AI is starting to become exactly the same across different locations in the world. So we're converging. We're able to do almost the same things. Now, clearly, companies with bigger resources will be a lot faster at it. But I think this technology is available. So in terms of you as product people, if you think about product, you should rely on this, and you will be able to catch up with the big companies just because you have access to AI. Why am I showing you this? We're raising our kids the same. There's a number of studies where you can see people in different parts of the world, like children, playing with exactly the same toys and reacting exactly the same way. Because I'm really afraid of like a PowerPoint crashing, I'm not including a video here. But Google it and you'll be surprised. Our homes are the same. Middle-class families, while they might have different means in different countries, I cannot make that argument and say that Bulgarian middle class lives as the US middle class, but the truth is we use exactly the same technologies in our home. We have roughly the same size of apartments. We used, each one of us buys IKEA, but this is converging. There is a very interesting study with pictures, which is on co-design, if anyone follows it, that you can go and see, and you will be surprised how different cultures actually start to live in pretty much the same way. Travel is also becoming quite similar for a lot of us. Obviously, we experience the world through travel, and it's important. But it is becoming the way we buy, the things that we want to see, the places where we want to go, are converging and they're roughly the same. Doesn't matter where your origin is, whether you're coming from Bulgaria and going to London or coming from Beijing and going to London, you want to see the same things. And the trends are starting to emerge as similar for the different areas of the world. In travel, just a quick example, TripAdvisor is one of the biggest companies in travel. This is their interface. I'm not going to go into details. That's Expedia, which is one of the oldest companies in travel. That's their interface. This is Skyscanner's interface, and this is Trip.com, which is a subsidiary of our parent company, Ctrip. That's their interface. The common thread, they all start looking the same. It's almost annoying. I mean, you go and you want to have some differentiation, but it's all the same. Airports are becoming the same, with the exception of our airport. Ride-hailing companies, huge success globally. This is Yandex Taxi. So that's how it looks. Didi in China, Uber obviously in the Western world and the United States, and Grab in Southeast Asia. Find the differences. It's exactly the same. Like some people even use the same colors and the same fonts. Why? Because they think that if people in the United States liked it, probably people in Indonesia will like it. But the point is, with a lot of A/B testing and optimizations, you come down to the same answer. This is just showing the spread of the ride-hailing technologies. It's a global phenomenon. So if the product is the same across the globe and it's a truly global thing, everyone from Brazil to the United States to Russia uses exactly the same interface, it means one thing, that people have the same tastes, or we have A/B tested the hell out of it, and we ended up that this is exactly the interface we should give to our consumers. Scooters, Bird, Jump, and Lime. Those are in San Francisco. A lot of people in San Francisco apparently are upset. Xiaomi and New are Chinese companies. I hear there are rumors that we might get one of those in Sofia. I wonder, like, we don't have the streets. I'm too disparaging, I'm sorry. Like, I'm just too easy to do it. But they look the same. It's exactly the same experience. It's exactly the same logic. Hotel experiences, restaurants, things to do, also exactly the same. Business models, one of the things that has been different for quite a while in the world, are again starting to converge. And now everyone talks about marketplaces. I'm sure you've heard that a lot, where you have first-party vendors, somebody sells on their own behalf, or a third-party vendor, I sell on somebody else's behalf. Those models are starting to become the same. Amazon, Alibaba, locally, eMag, I don't even know who, use exactly the same model. Do you recognize this image? This is Black Mirror. It's a scary show. If you haven't seen it, watch the first episode and then drop it because everything's lost. But is there hope? I think there is. As we all converge and we use the same technologies to build the same products for roughly the same kind of people, what matters is time to market. The truth is, Google and Alibaba will get there faster. Not because you guys are not smarter than them, not because Skyscanner is not smarter than them. They have unlimited number of resources. So there is a way you can beat this convergence trend. What I'm showing you is a local company. I haven't asked for their permission to show it, but I wanted to show it anyway. It's called By Far. It's a luxury shoe brand which doesn't even sell really in Bulgaria. It sells all over the globe, and they have a very interesting story. They're sourcing their materials from eco-friendly environments. They're not killing animals. They're buying out the cow hide and the skin to produce the shoes in a responsible manner. So they're really authentic. And if you check out their Instagram account, I think they have 100,000 users all over the globe, and even Michelle Obama was featured with By Far shoes. They're authentic. They have a good story. Another interesting story is Tom's, which is again a shoe company in the United States. What those guys are doing is, you can read it. they're inspired by different markets, but they buy shoes for people who don't have shoes. So for every pair you buy from Tom's, there is going to be a pair that is donated to somebody who is in need for shoes. Those two companies have a very interesting, authentic way to speak to their consumers. They don't want to be necessarily the biggest company in the world. They don't want to be necessarily global, but they can relate to consumers and make themselves different in terms of how they approach their customers through authentic beliefs. The belief that everyone should have shoes, which is Tom's, and the belief that you can actually do business in an ethical way without harming animals, as is the case in by far. Some of you might have seen this advertising campaign by Nike, but basically that should apply to all of us. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. If you want to really connect to your customers and fight this trend of convergence, build an authentic brand, build an authentic product that has a story, because otherwise it's going to look exactly the same and you'll be spending tons of money with Google trying to get the traffic for every customer you have. All right, some thoughts. Anyone asleep? You guys seem to be doing fine. Eastern Europe, Latin America, and Africa, next battlegrounds. The internet is spreading there. Take money from Asia, get inspired by Asia, but build your products for those locations because that's where you're going to see a lot of growth. Products are becoming immediately global. Don't think that you're doing something special because, let's say, our product in Romania is doing fantastically well. Probably it already exists like in other countries in the world. 3, companies are becoming the same. Don't try to innovate too much on the business model. It's pretty much that. Either you sell or you sell on somebody's behalf. And then go big or go home, or actually go authentic. So if you are trying to really find your little corner or a bigger corner, or hopefully even take over a market, try to build products that feel authentic with their mission, with the way you build them, with something that you care about. Otherwise, we'll all be victims to the big pockets of Google, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, and Apple. Congratulations, you survived 97 slides in exactly 30 minutes. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you. I think we have some time for questions. I can see you nodding. Okay, good. If you guys want to ask me anything or make a comment or just judge me in front of like, what is this, 250 people and say that entirely sucked, I'm fine. So who's gonna break the ice? Nobody? There's a few hands.
Hi.
Hey.
I would like to ask you about, you said like the next big markets are Eastern Europe, Africa, and Latin America.
Yep.
Which one of these do you think is going to be the next biggest battleground?
So in terms of size, Africa is actually quite big, but in terms of internet population, it's quite small. I would bet on Latin America. The reason for this is there is good internet penetration in Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Chile. If you extend Latin America, the concept of Latin America a little bit to South America, which, I mean, actually Latin America includes Mexico and the rest of the countries, the market is quite sizable. The internet penetration is there. The ownership of phones per person is really high. So if I needed to order them, first is going to be LATAM. Second, most likely Eastern Europe. The reason again is because of access to internet and payment technologies. And last, it will be Africa. In terms of size in 5 years from now, Africa for sure will be the one that has the biggest size. It's currently at 1 billion people. I would expect that at least studies say that it will double or triple by 2050.
Thank you.
Thanks. So somebody decided to drop their question. I think it was in that part of the room that somebody raised a hand, but... Ah, there we go. Thank you.
Sorry. You said that the taste amongst all people in the world is almost the same, so technologies adopt this taste. But do you think it is possible that for the technology to build the taste and to teach us our taste?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, some people, so we have Ryanair here. I'll give you an example in our industry. And a lot of people are upset that Ryanair charges us like 40, 50, 60 euros to add an additional bag when we fly with the plane. The truth is, there is a whole generation of people who don't fly with like additional bags. They fly only with a backpack. And that was basically Ryanair with a specific charge teaching us don't take this on board. Try to fly with like less luggage. I think if you build something, if you're a category defining product, people will follow you and they will learn how to use your product. You will set the trend. Now, clearly, you're gonna get copied within, if you're successful, within 6 months to a year. But I think there is a way you can drive the trend rather than just following it. Absolutely. Just find your niche and make sure that you have something specific that people actually want to use, or they find like, okay, this is quite exciting. Let's just go and give it a shot.
Thank you. Great example for an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I got an A plus 6. Odličan. Here's a question right there. Can we spread it out? Can you guys ask questions on the other end so like the guy just runs like back and forth? That'll be awesome.
Yeah. So thank you. It was very interesting, and like convergence was the red line across your presentation. And so my question is, if we take like those travel apps, like TripAdvisor or Skyscanner or something like this, is it going to be a convergence, or is it going to be something like the strongest survive and that's it?
Great question. So TripAdvisor is a publicly listed company. Skyscanner is owned by Ctrip, and then if you take a look at Kayak, which let's throw them in the mix as well, they're owned by Booking Holdings. All of those companies, in theory, have unlimited runway in terms of budget. So I don't think it's going to be survival of the fittest because it's pretty much same resources. I think for us as Skyscanner, what we care about is we deeply care about the user. The number of times we've introduced features that lost us money is endless. Like we'll do stuff that hurts us, but over time it pays back for us. We're really trying to do a better experience for the user. So with us, you won't necessarily see a hotel just because somebody paid us X. That's why it's number one. And we have different approaches. TripAdvisor has built a masterfully good hotels business. They probably are arguably have the best inventory on earth. It's a different approach. So to go back to what you asked me, is it survival of the fittest? In a way, it is always. But if you try to differentiate a little bit, I think you might have a chance. For those three companies that I mentioned, I don't think one of them will, in 5 years, actually say we won. Let's not forget that there's the big elephant in the room called Google, and they can eat everyone's lunch. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, one question for my side as well. I was wondering, you mentioned few different products which are mostly used in Asia.
Yep.
Why we haven't seen them here in Europe or United States? I don't know. We just know for just few of them.
So the best, that's a great, thank you for the question. The best companies who can localize and expand outside of English-speaking markets are companies that were born in Europe. And the reason for this is that if you want to address Europe as a market, you need to immediately think about 48 languages. In the United States, a lot of companies find it hard to go into many different markets outside of like, you know, English side, English-speaking side, maybe Germany, maybe the UK, because they're not used to localization. Similar thing happens in Asia. Chinese companies are not great at localizing their product, so they will not necessarily be relevant in particular markets. And because the market in China is so big, if I'm sitting on the board of Alibaba, why would I even care about building a product in Bulgaria if there's still like number of people in China, which is probably 100 times bigger in terms of market that can use us there. So one of the reasons is localization. It's really hard to do it if you're not born within an international environment. Thank you for the question. Thank you.
Thank you for the inspiring lecture. And my question is, do you see when you monitor the different markets, the forming of new needs, new customer needs?
Yeah, mostly around payments. So this is an example. So for Skyscanner, we, as I mentioned, we operate in more than, we're available in every single country, but we don't manage it. To be honest with you, we don't have the resources for this. But Brazil and Argentina, I'll give you a good example relevant to your question. In Europe and in the United States and in Asia, people pay almost immediately. Like they see something, they like it, they go and pay. Some people will decide to pick a hotel where you can pay at the check-in. In Latin America, for a lot of the countries, and it could be an economic reason or just a trend, people want to have installments. That's what they call it. So instead of like paying at one time, $200 for your flight, you almost take like a credit and then you pay it all over time. So we do see differences like this. Not a lot though. I mean, I'm yet to see something which is so specific for a market that no other market will benefit from, which leads us to think that there is a lot of convergence happening. Our homepage in all those markets is the same. We've tested it like hundreds of times with like millions of users, and we basically say that's exactly how it needs to look across the board. But you'll have like little pieces here and there, too small though to say this is a trend. Good. 3 minutes and 26 seconds. No, it's like I was telling Christo that I don't know how to fill in 45 minutes, so we got it to 42. All right, 42 is good enough. It's a good number. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here.